Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our commitment is to help, hope, and healing of our veteran family and our nation. I'm Jim Blythe, a U.S. Navy veteran and a certified senior advisor. Join us as we continue the mission of leadership and commitment to our communities and our great country. Why, you never know where we're going to go or who you're going to meet. We invite you to join in, plug in, and share in what we do. This is your Veterans Impact Show.
Hey, great day. Cedric White, I want you to be telling people what you do with Healing Thine Hearts Ministry. It is terrific.
Well, it is terrific. God has blessed us to be able to work with families, both military, first responders, for helping them with relationships. We do marriage retreats. We do certification for people who want to do what we do. But the biggest thing is to bless families in the way of counseling for couples, counseling for families, and even singles before they get married. We love that even more.
Now, Cedric, I ask you to do that as a segue into the wonderful couple we've got joining us today,
yes,
who have been through more fire than you and I can ever imagine.
Yes.
And have been through more. I got to tell you, it's just one of the most gut-wrenching stories I've ever heard, but one of the most hopeful stories I've ever heard.
And to still be together.
And
That's
still
the
be
wonderful
together.
thing. Yes.
And still be together. I'd like to introduce Paul and Christin Slough. How about you guys? We're so glad to have you aboard. What a gorgeous day. I think right now I mentioned walk through the fire. Let me just stop for a second and say your story of what you've gone through, of betrayal from our own federal government, betrayal by the justice system, imprisonment unfairly, is scary to me. And Jordan, if you can show the book, this book, Gina Keating wrote this book, Raven 23, about what happened. So if you want to know what happened, what really happened, go get it. It's a documentary, and it changed her life, didn't it?
Absolutely.
So, Paul, why don't we jump in real quick? I've introduced you. Tell us a little bit about your military background and how you got into Iraq and how you got into Blackwater, and then kind of what happened.
Yeah, so being a West Texas kid, you know, you've got that red, white, and blue pretty much coursing through your veins from a tender age. And at age 18, I decided that was the best route for me to just really go see the world and to have the opportunity to go see something else besides West Texas. I love the place, I love the people, but it was something that I wanted to do, and I did. And I entered in 99, deployed to Bosnia for my first deployment as a kid. And then 9/11 happened, and our unit at the time with 3rd ID, as I understood it, wasn't going to deploy. And so my decision was then to go into the National Guard and go to school, go to college. This was after going to selection there in the 82nd, at Fort Bragg. Got injured and went in front of the board, and the decision was then for me to go to a National Guard SF unit, which didn't work out the way the recruiter had explained it. Nevertheless, continued mission, went to school, and met this incredible woman that you're going to hear more from today. Went into the National Guard and deployed pretty quickly after we were married. I think it was a couple months I got orders.
Yeah, we arrived back from our honeymoon to activation orders. As a matter of fact, the timing, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was his friends that he drilled with messing with us, because I couldn't believe that he was A, being deployed, and B, that it was the moment we arrived from our honeymoon. And he was gone like 6 weeks later. We were married in May, and he was gone by August.
Ouch.
Yes, unexpected.
Yeah. Now, that's the first bonfire. So where did you deploy to? Iraq?
So we deployed first to Fort Hood, mobilized from there, and then, yes, sir, went to Iraq, and we were stationed in Talil Air Base.
In Afghanistan. In Iraq.
Yes, sir, in Iraq.
And so were you were still with the National Guard at that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you encounter a lot of hostility, a lot of firefights? Did you encounter a lot of combat?
There were a few potential points of contact that did occur, and then we could almost set our watches by the rounds and the mortars and rockets that were coming in, just kind of more and more. Of course, we lost one of our best guys, Tommy, and that was a big hit on the unit.
So then you get to come home and tell us about that, because you made a decision that you didn't think the mission was done.
Right. Yeah. So I'd returned home, and I was at the time working at a Home Depot, and I just felt like the mission wasn't completed. Like we hadn't been able to check that box yet where we were able to give these people their country back. And at the time, for a young idealistic kid, that's what I thought the mission was, is to stabilize this area in order for these people to take their country back over. Now at the age of 46, I look back and see that really wasn't the mission from the high ups anyway.
Yeah.
So when he started looking at that, we looked at all of our options. He was wanting also to pursue his college degree. So we were looking at the Army Green to Gold program and different things. But I had graduated and earned my degree and was honestly really hesitant to be somebody who was going to have to move from Army post to Army post and not be able to establish a career. And so we were kind of in the throes of having those conversations when he went to a veterans career fair, and a career fair geared towards veterans, and came across a setup for Blackwater, who is a private military contractor that offered the ability of much shorter contracts, 90 days on, 30 days off. When he went with the National Guard, he was gone for 6 months and only home for 2 weeks. So you were home twice as much for twice as long, shorter contracts and more money. Right. And he was doing a lot of the same things that he had been doing with the National Guard in Iraq. And so it made a lot of sense for us, for him to apply and go through their selection process.
Well, one of the things, you're still working for the United States government. Correct. You're not working for the United States military. You're working alongside it because they didn't have the assets to be able to protect the diplomats and the Americans that were on the ground in Iraq.
Specifically for the Department of State. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you were working for the Department of State as a civilian contractor.
Yes, sir.
So how many deployments did you make with them before the incident in Baghdad?
3 or 4.
Yeah, so it was, you went in with them in 2006, and then
late 05.
Yeah, late 05, early 06, and then it happened in September 2007. So I think it was almost 2 years that you were with Blackwater.
Paul, did you feel like you were still part of the American military, or did you feel separated?
Hands down. And I give Eric Prince a lot of credit for putting together a program like this, where you have guys from DevGru, from the SEAL teams, from the Green Berets, from MARSOC, all in this giant pool, moving forward in one accord. And also you had guys from SWAT teams that were stationed in like Los Angeles and Chicago and New York, so they understood what it was to work in that urban environment. And so what he did, in my mind, masterfully, is he brought all of these different subsets and these groups together, wherein we were able to move as one team, but then there wasn't so many egos where there were demands placed on the guys, wherein if you had an idea or a different approach that was proved successful in the past, you could test that method and go forward as a team. And frankly, I think the way he did that is the reason that we did have the 100% success that we did. We never lost a principal, and I don't recall that we even had one injured.
In this regard, you were not an offensive.
No, sir.
You were a defensive group, strictly to defend certain, you call assets, people.
Yes, sir. The entire goal of our mission set was to ensure that the diplomat, ranging from the United States diplomat, which at the time was Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, all the way down to the USAID workers. Make sure these people make it home, period.
Okay, so let's cut to the chase, because where we really want to go with this conversation is not this book and not harping on what happened to Raven 23, but how you two guys as a family work together. You were the only family, and well, one of your guys was single, but the other two families didn't stay together. You guys did, and that is an enormous story. Everybody wants to talk about this. We want to know about how you manage to come together, how you manage to work together. So let's start, if I can, let's start with what happened that fateful day in Baghdad.
Yeah, so September 16th, our team was sitting in the chow hall, having chow. We were the tertiary unit that day, which just means we were the backup to the backup. We were a TST team, which means a tactical support team, kind of like the 911. Whenever something goes off, you call us, we'll come get you. So we were sitting there eating. Car bomb goes off, which in Baghdad at the time was really nothing to raise eyebrows about. As I understand it, there were about 180 attacks a day on average in the city.
Wow.
So for us,
180.
It was just another day at the office, so to speak. And I got so much flack from our attorneys for saying that, but I mean, it really was. So we get the call over the radios, contact. We get to the vehicles, take off to checkpoint 12. They're taking on small arms fire on their venue, so they hard point the principal, meaning they're waiting for the primary to show up and evac them off of the X. Our goal, as we understood it that day, was to leave checkpoint 12 and secure Nasur Square, which is the traffic circle that's talked about in the book. As soon as we arrived, we knew something was wrong. Everyone was commenting over the radio that there's something wrong, there's something not right, and within 10, 15 seconds, the white Kia, which was on the BOLO list that morning, be on the lookout, was deemed a threat because they said that somewhere within the city there's a white Kia that's a car bomb, so be on the lookout. This car punches out of traffic, which is noted by not just us, but also Iraqi witnesses. So what are we to think? Game time.
Yeah.
We're the first responders on a contact call. That was there at that time. Their TTP, tactic, technique, and procedure, was to attack the first responders. So we thought, okay, here we go. Immediately, myself and others open up fire on the vehicle. Vehicle stops and then starts to progress forward. We continue to engage this vehicle to make it stop because the distance between yourself and that vehicle, that vehicle-borne IED, could mean a life saved. As we were engaged in the car, it was almost at the same time, it was a small arms attack on us. It was a small ambush that we think to this day was set up for that low-pro team to come through there because those guys were just in BMWs and Audis. They weren't in fighting platform vehicles. So we were in the middle of this fight that was set up for that team to come through, and our vehicle gets taken out by incoming fire. The radiator was shot out with tires on the left-hand side shot out and pock marks along the driver's side along with the turret where I was sitting or engaging from. And then our vehicle went down. We get towed out. Sporadic fire on the way out. We get back to our staging area within the IZ. Obviously, the low-pro team and the first TST team made an in-run around where we were. Obviously, you're not going to run through an active gunfight. And so they get back. They're secure. So that was our kind of an indicator to get on back. I don't remember all the comms at that time, of course. It's still kind of fuzzy, but that was it.
It was years before I learned a lot about what my husband's role was in those things, because you don't share a lot about the danger levels with your wife at home. And so, fast forward several years and we're looking at evidence and we're looking at this picture of this bear cat and it has these bullet strikes all across it. And I come to the realization that there's this turret and my husband's torso is sticking out of it and that these bullet marks are inches below where his torso and his head were exposed and that they were aiming at my husband. And it just was a real reality check in that moment, being confronted with seeing the bullet strikes that were intended to end his life.
And you ask about, excuse me.
No, I was going to ask you, how many were these insurgents? Were these people outside of Iraq that were in there stirring this up, or were these Iraqis, and were they the Iraqi military? And in doing so, how many, do you think you had any idea how many were attacking you?
I have to look back through the reports, but I think there was anywhere between 12 to 15. And there was a gunner that was on one of the Little Birds that was giving us air support at the time that testified in court that he witnessed several people taking off Iraqi police uniforms, wrapping up their AK-47s and putting them in the back of a bongo truck. Wow. Now, under those uniforms were civilian clothes. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of our first experience and really what raised alarms within the camp, because this was first confirmed. We had heard about it and reports on it, but this was the first time that we were saying, yes, we were engaged by the Iraqi police and the INGs.
Okay. Gina Keating makes some points and has a lot of this evidence in the book. You want to know more about it, go read the book. Now, you're back. I'm going to ask a hard question. How many of the insurgents do you think you guys injured or killed to save your own lives and save your assets' life? Do you think there was life loss or loss of life?
Yeah, of course. You engage a threat until you stop the threat. As far as numbers go, I don't recall.
The book said 8.
Okay.
Well, there's just context there. So there were initially reported 8, and then the numbers started ballooning as the news articles started coming out and as the Iraqi government started running TV ads looking for victims. So it went to like 8 to 12 to 14 to 17, and they eventually ended at 31 counts of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter. And because they don't have the same type of like emergency response and things that we do here, and because it got so convoluted through the, judicial case, it's probably not something y'all would be able to tell live from your own firsthand point of view what the aftermath exactly was. But yeah, that looks like, that probably sounds about like what the evidence suggests was the actual loss of life there with the insurgents.
Well, and I guess I misunderstood your question. Maybe you were asking about the alleged victims versus the actual bad guys on the ground. And I'll add a fine point to Christin is there was never an autopsy done. Never. On any of the alleged victims.
So you don't
Some
know.
of the loss of life there is clearly from insurgent rounds. Like there was a child that was killed with a black tip round that they blamed on my husband, but they knew ballistically it was impossible.
Wow. So you're fighting for your life.
Sure.
And you're trying to save this asset. And for lack of a better term, all hell breaks loose. And that was in what year? It was
September 16, 2007.
Okay, 2007. Then we're going to take a break in just a second. This is an amazing story. We're going to suggest you go get Raven 23. But what we're going to get into next is how Paul and Christin came together as a family. And this is where Cedric, my co-host, as a marriage counselor, can really help to bring out some of the emotion, some of the things, bring the depth to this story. Can you just imagine finding out your husband is in one amazing firefight and that they're shooting at everybody and the vehicle gets 2 tires blown out, gets a radiator blown out? Because where we're leading is what happened next that is disheartening. So this is Veterans Impact Show. We'll be right back as Cedric brings us back. Stay with us. It's an exciting story.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
All right, Cedric White here with Big Jim Blythe. We have an exciting couple here with us today, Paul and Christin Slough. The book Raven 23. As we hear the story, as we listen to what you guys went through, my mind goes through all the way back to your initial enlistment, then your re-engagement with Blackwater. And what your thoughts were. It's like, okay, this is sort of going to be sort of like the military, but what turned into something totally different when things transpired, right? What were your thoughts when you guys were together and you're planning life? How did you move through that transformation?
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm a real long-term planner. I think we were just very young and kind of taking things as they were. So he was interested in pursuing that mission. I was interested in having a career. And so going back into the Army full-time wasn't going to work for us. So when we chose that path, I figured that he would do that for a couple of years. It was fairly lucrative, that we would bank some money, and then he would come back and go to school, and we would just kind of continue to move on with our lives. And so we were just kind of in this, what I'd call like a short-term transitional phase where we weren't planning way too far out, and we hadn't started a family yet. And so when this incident took place, it was incredibly shocking. I was at work and I get like a Google chat from him, and I had actually already heard that something was happening. People were messaging me and saying, like, something's going on with Blackwater, and we know that Paul is involved with them. Do you think he's involved? And I'm like, I have no idea.
Right.
So I'm waiting to hear from him, and my Google chat pings, which is how we really communicated with each other at the time. And he tells me, he's like, something really strange happened today. He was like, I was involved in a pretty regular engagement, but I'm seeing the news, and what they're presenting is not at all what happened. And he said, I'm just not sure what's going on here. And we both remember very specifically. And I said, hey, I'm behind you 110%. If you say what they're saying is not true, it's just not true.
Right.
So he comes back from on a regular, his R&R was scheduled like fairly shortly after. And so he came home on a regular R&R after that. And it was like living in an alternate universe. We went from being complete nobodies to people talking about this situation every day on the news, calling your husband a murderer, calling all these people these names and things. And it had absolutely kind of nothing to do with the truth. And we were also told, don't say anything. So we're just, kind of in our house, just like watching this unfold on the news in front of us. And just kind of like taking it a day at the time. And at the time, we kind of thought that it would just kind of get resolved. He even had a plane ticket to go back to Iraq at the end of his R&R. And they contacted him and said, hey, so we think perhaps the Iraqi police are going to be waiting for you to come back in country and try to arrest you and take custody of you at Baghdad International Airport, because the underlying situation here was all about the status of forces agreement and these disagreements about who should have jurisdiction over civilian contractors in the country and propping up their candidate for the next prime minister election. So there's all this political stuff in the book. That's probably the most boring part of it. But it was, we were very young. I mean, we weren't, but in our, 20s, and we thought we were very grown when we were in our 20s, but, being in our 40s now, you realize you were not very grown when you were in your 20s. And we were just kind of relying on Blackwater and the attorneys to tell us what we should be doing.
So you got indicted.
Yeah. So when I came back, I was working with an attorney, Bill Cofield, and my entire statement had been released to the press, which was a sworn immunized statement turned over to him, or turned over to ABC News, which was pushed out. And then the target letter came, and then shortly thereafter, indictments came.
Okay, so you go, let's fast forward. You're in this legal merry-go-round for what, 7+ years?
Yeah,
Yeah,
from
from the
2000.
time
Okay.
it got tossed out.
And it gets tossed out once. And one of the judges you told me said, based upon the law, I'd have tossed this out. So it was over and done with.
He actually did toss it out. He gave a 90-page rebuke on what had happened, because not only had we been cleared by the Department of State investigators before we left country, but also he pointed out that how our constitutional rights had been basically obliterated, along with using our sworn statements against us, which wasn't supposed to happen.
Okay, so all of a sudden, election, change of administration, then there's a total change because they're politically posturing and they threw you to the wolves.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And so play that Biden slip, please.
Let me take this opportunity to express my personal regret, excuse me, for the violence in Kisur involving Blackwater employees in 2007. The United States is determined to hold accountable anyone who commits crimes against the Iraqi people. While we fully respect the independence and integrity of the U.S. judicial system, we were disappointed by the judge's decision to dismiss the indictment, which was based on the way in which some evidence had been acquired. A dismissal, I want to make clear, is not an acquittal. And today, I'm announcing that the United States government will appeal this decision. Our Justice Department will file that appeal from the judge's decision next week.
Thank you, Mr. President. You will send the information.
Okay. So here we are. Bang. You're getting hit from the top and they're coming after you.
Yeah, when it comes from the tippy top, you pretty much understand that here we go again for round two.
Okay. And in Gina's book, and I'm just going to kind of help to fast forward, they lied. They hid evidence. There was a DOD investigator that didn't go to the site till days after it. There was no security in the site, and he picked up all kinds of AK-47 rounds. Which one of you had an AK-47?
Never issued.
Never issued. And what weapons were you issued?
For myself, I had the 240 Bravo because I was in the turret, and then I had an AR with a 203 attached, and then a Glock Model 17.
Okay. So you had all American military.
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things that they charged you not only with murder, and charged one of your guys with murder and gave him a life sentence, but using a not well-known law. And when I read this in the book, I couldn't go, what? A law that had been passed that if somebody robbed a 7-Eleven with a machine gun, they got an automatic 31 years.
So it was a 924C charge is the name of the statute, and it was passed under the Reagan administration for the war on drugs his plank issue.
So all of a sudden, you're being charged with murder and with weapons violations. When we come back, we've got a long segment that we're going to take you through now, deeper and deeper in the relationship between Christin and Paul and how they stayed together. And you have a child, a beautiful child I have met. This is Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you, and we're here not to make a political statement. We're here for hope, help, and healing. We're here to show you what it takes to walk through the fire of a tremendous situation that would tear any other couple apart. We'll be right back after these words from all of our partners. Thank you. This is Veterans Impact.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
Christin, how did you feel when your husband is saying this and all of this evidence is saying that?
Well, honestly, the evidence supported what he was saying. So when we went through with our lawyers, we went through all of the pictures, we went through all of it, and the evidence really showed it. And we went through the entire trial, and the prosecution would put up these witnesses, and then the defense would absolutely destroy their testimony, showed that many were lying. Their testimonies would be stricken from the record. So by the time the prosecution's presentation was over in this trial, that happened 7 years later in front of a civilian jury in Washington, D.C. I mean, we thought by the time it was time for the defense presentation that it was, I thought our justice system worked. I thought when you presented the truth to 12 jurors that they were fair arbiters. And because of the venue manipulation, because of the manipulations and just the hiding of exculpatory evidence and just the lying and misrepresentations that happened, that just wasn't what we experienced. And so we fully expected, we did not have, when we went to go hear the jury verdict that day, we fully expected to be in our car on the way back to Texas the next day, packing up and moving on out, because we were up there with our 1.5-year-old daughter and 2 dogs. And we had been living in DC for, 6 months at this point, 4 months of trial and 8 weeks of jury deliberations, because the judge would not let them hang despite them sending notes and saying, what do we do if we can't come to an agreement? And he says, I'm not going to hear this case again. So he let them linger for 8 weeks to deliberate this case before finally, the holdouts, I guess, acquiesced. But there was not a single combat veteran on that jury. And that's one of our rights, is to be heard by a jury of our peers.
Yes.
So it was not a jury of their peers. And when we went into court to hear the verdicts, the first one that they read off was Nick Slatton's. So Nick's was first degree murder, and it was the hardest to prove with the highest threshold and the least amount of evidence. And so when they read his off and said that it was guilty, I knew that all the other 31 counts of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter would be the same. And it's kind of a black spot in my memory right there, kind of a trauma hole. But they just handed me a box with their shoelaces and watches and belts and, ties and everything in it as they took custody of them. And they just gave me a box, and our attorneys were just forlorn, and they just basically said sorry. And I took my box, and my mom was with me, and we just left.
And Paul is taken away in handcuffs.
Yes.
Wow.
How did you feel, Paul?
It's really hard. It's really hard to put into context, and honestly, the English language, that feeling of despair, and the feeling of betrayal. And in John chapter 1, verse 5, it says, "The light did not comprehend the darkness." Excuse me, the darkness did not comprehend the light. And the inverse was true here. It was like, well, wait a minute, I can't even comprehend. In the Greek, it was kataleben. I can't comprehend. Yeah,
That's pretty horrible, isn't it?
it was. It's crushing.
In the book, let me just tell you, because Cedric hadn't had a chance to read this. It talks about how evidence was tampered, how people lied, people said these things happened that didn't happen. It came out and basically went to trial and said there was no firefight. They were not attacked. They just opened fire on civilians and killed civilians.
I'll give you a funny one too.
Not funny, but I'll
Not
take
funny
it.
now. Not funny then, it is now. The prosecution actually said it was our fault that the drone footage is missing because we didn't file to preserve it. And our attorneys, nor us, even knew that we had a drone watching. So the footage shows us coming into the circle, and then it's black. And then there's a wet spot where our Bearcat was, and then it's over.
From the radiator fluid. So they deleted the drone footage of this incident and then blamed the defense that they didn't ask to preserve it, even though we didn't even know it existed. I mean, it was just one of the
They
many.
got the beginning and they got the end, but they deleted showing all of these insurgents attacking. And they also brought an expert that said, all of these pockmarks on your vehicle were not bullets.
Right.
They said it was blowback from their own rounds, like they were shooting at themselves or something. I mean, it's egregious. It's really blatant how the government will, or these particular people in the government will just throw the law in your face. I mean, they make a mockery of it in front of your face.
Let me ask. I have to ask. How do you hold on to your faith in a situation like that? Right? I believe, but then for something so blatantly wrong, right? For the lies to just come wave after wave, right? And you're sitting there in disbelief. How do you hold on?
So recently I reread the story of Mary and Joseph. And in thinking through what that couple went through in that time period, today it's a sweet story.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
But you put it in proper context and you see what Mary's going through,
Yes.
what Joseph is going through, the culture,
Right.
and what the temple did to these people. The one thing that Christin pointed out earlier when we were all visiting was she and I, and I'll let her tell the story, she and I were sitting in front of our house in Gainesville, Texas before we were getting ready to move to D.C.
Yeah, and our daughter was sleeping in the back seat. You know, babies always fall asleep in the car every single time. So we're just sitting out in the front of the house, letting the kiddo have a nap. And I said, I guess, you know, we really have just a couple of ways to look at this. And I think that God picked us for this because we're special. And because he believes he can trust us with this, that we'll be leaders through this, that there's a purpose and some kind of mission here that he has for us. And we thought our mission was to go through the trial and then, you know, come out triumphant. And that was not the case. And the first time God, spoke to me, spoke to me clearly was the night of the conviction. And I was in the shower crying and I don't cry in front of people. I've always been that, you know, very like stoic, you know, handle business, get it done kind of girl. And I'm crying out to the Lord. I'm so mad. And I'm like, you said it would be okay. And he said very clearly, I did not say when. And I was so furious in that moment. In the fury of that moment, I was so upset. But then every time I found myself getting just lost in it, I remember I'm like, you just didn't say when.
Right.
You just didn't say when. And so it was one of those really revealing moments that kept me going when it was super dark. And it did get really dark, especially the first 2 years under the Obama administration. There was nothing to be done. I was knocking on every door, sending every email, making every phone call. Could not get anybody to pay attention besides our local congressman, Dr. Burgess. He was incredible the entire time. But it was so hopeless for the first 2 years between 2014 and 2016.
Can you imagine when I'm thinking about biblically the story of Joseph, right? Going in, being sold, betrayed by your family, right? And being betrayed by the country, then being sold into being placed in prison, and then being left there thinking there's no answer, but you can't give up, right? You can't give up. And I think it's a testament to the love that you have and the faith that you have, that you guys didn't just throw in the towel, that you did keep knocking, you did keep going, because you can't, in this situation, I think it's one of those things where, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Right? You only have things to gain in this situation. So you just keep going. I have to ask you, Paul, what were your thoughts? You're in prison.
Yeah, so when we got convicted, we were all carried back to the bullpen, and our attorneys came back and they grabbed our stuff, of course, with the marshals. And I don't think I said anything that was coherent at the time, just because I was in shock.
Yeah.
But I looked at my attorney, Linda Bailey, and I said, tell Christin, keep the faith. Keep the faith. That's all I had.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Can I ask a question? You and I talked about your faith, that you grew up in a Southern Baptist church. You had some incidents, but you really came to faith, you told me, on a prison floor.
Yeah, so being just incredibly angry and frustrated with an almighty God that would allow something like this to happen to one of his children, someone that he loves, supposedly. I went to him and challenged him. And I said, if you are who you say you are, show me who I am without your son. Be a man, come to me and let's talk. And I don't even know that I completed the sentence, and I was crushed. It was an immediate recognition of all of my sin, all of my stuff that he hung on the cross for. And I was there for, 36 hours. Distraught in segregation in D.C. County Jail with all of that chaos going on around. And that was a real moment of a prodigal being welcomed back, albeit rough, but it was by my challenge.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, young man, I'll see you where you are. And he did.
I had a similar story. I was going on a work trip, flying on an airplane, and I decided to challenge God, and I do not know why I was there. I was so angry and mad, and I challenged him. And I will tell you that I've never experienced turbulence like that in my entire life until I absolutely relented. And I said, okay, you are who you say you are. And boy, he brought me back so fast.
Now, let's go forward. You two guys stayed connected. How often were you able to communicate? And then you have a 1.5-year-old, and you were sent to El Reno, which is just outside Oklahoma City, on the west side of Oklahoma City. It's not it's not a Leavenworth, but it's no fun either. Tell us how you communicated. How did you guys manage to stay together? Because if you can't communicate, that's tough right there.
Sheer will. In the federal prison system, you get 300 minutes a month. That's 10 minutes a day to talk to anybody. Not just 10 minutes a day for me, 10 minutes a day to talk to anybody that he wants to communicate with. So just the basic administrative, and it's just sheer will, and the fact that we made a commitment to each other, and I love him, and he is worth it, and our daughter's worth it, and the family that we chose very deliberately to start together was absolutely worth it, and we were just not willing to give that up. I looked around me at all of these, sadly, these men that don't participate in their kids' lives, who have absolute access to them and are so shoddy and don't do the things that they need to do. And then you have a man who wants to do everything for his child and has no access. So for the majority, besides COVID, we got in the car, drove up 3 hours every week, 3-hour visit, 3-hour back. When she was really small, we would drive up on like a Friday, spend the night, visit, spend another night, because that's too rigorous for somebody that's 1.5 years old. As she got older, and she's just my little road warrior, man. We would go up 3-hour drive, 3-hour visit, 3-hour back, nearly every single week, to make sure that they had that connection. And he would learn things like how to make little origami frogs out of dollars that would jump, because all we had was like paper towels to play with and vending machine money and Cheetos and stickers and whatever it was we were just, vying for attention with. And that happened from 1.5 to 8 years old.
Now, what were you doing at that time?
So I was actually a vice president with Bank of America for a long time, from 2011 until 2017. And I loved that job, and I was not looking for anything else when I got approached about a direct selling opportunity, kind of an MLM thing. And it was so funny because I kind of felt like direct selling was approximately one step above prostitution. And it wasn't something I had to do because I had a real job, but it was like a magic product. It's like a lip color that doesn't come off. It's like a really neat product. And so I decided I was going to sell a little bit of it, let my friends and family get some, and then I was just going to move on. And that just was not God's plan for it. He blessed that business. He blessed the friendships I made in that business. Within a year, I had $1 million team. Within 2 years, I had a $5 million team. Within 3 years, I had a $10 million team. And I left my job at the bank because I woke up one day and I had 2 full-time jobs. Right. I was traveling for one. I was a single mother. And I was also trying to advocate for him. And I was like, I may have had said yes to too many things. And so I left my job at the bank, much to my father's chagrin, because he had been an entrepreneur his whole life and didn't want me to live with that kind of stress. And I've been an entrepreneur ever since. Although I'm in a bit of a transition phase right now and kind of looking for my next opportunity. But it was that organization that put a lot of personal development, a lot of faith, and built a huge community around me of women who were willing to just go to bat with me.
So you had all kinds of support. Did you have support in the prison?
Yeah, it's interesting in that environment. You kind of pick your people.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, there are great people in there. Some who found themselves in a situation where they were innocent men that got caught up in a bad situation. And then others, one of my best friends lives here now. He's gotten out. He's rebuilding his life. He was just a young kid that needed some money and made some decisions that got him to where he was, but he did his time, and now he's out being a great dad and husband.
Speaking of great dad, Jordan, would you please show that Lily video for us so we can meet Lily? What a beautiful child. I met her at the event where I met you guys, and I was blown away. Jordan, can you play the Lily video, please?
Lily didn't know any better. Lily didn't know that when other kids say they were going to visit their dad on the weekend, that they weren't going to a prison. Okay. She thought everybody went to go visit. We lived in Sanger, Texas, which is small, and there's a lot of non-nuclear families there that have parents that are divorced. And so we were entering kindergarten at least before she even realized that her family was different.
Paddington Bear, I think, was the moment when it sparked in her the reason why.
Yeah.
Paddington had gone to prison under false pretenses.
There was a Paddington Bear too, and I took her to see it. I had no idea what the plot line was. It was just freaking Paddington Bear, man. And so we go see Paddington Bear, and the entire plot line is around him getting pinned up for something he didn't do, and like trying to escape and trying to clear his name. And it was such a beautiful gift from God, because he's so generous to me, and he's generous in the details of my life, that he gave me a relatable story to help Lily understand what happened. Because I could tell her, just like I could try to tell the story right, like the facts of what happened, but the story is what made it make sense to her. And I was like, this is what happened with Dad. Wow. And then we had to talk about, why hasn't Dad tried to escape? And have good conversations around that, and because that's a movie, and because of this, and because it's dangerous, and because he wants to be with us, and that's very dangerous, and we're going to do it the safe way.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after these words from all of our partners.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
Wow. That was the video. I think it got all 4 of us. My wife as well, 5. All right. We don't have a lot of time left. Let's talk about, then you started, or you were doing legal challenges. You were advocate. You found out about all this information. You finally found an advocate.
Yeah, so we were just pressing. It was all, I had no money, I had no influence. It was just talking to whoever would listen, walking up and down the halls of Congress, walking up and down the halls of the Senate, and forming a strategy of like, what does the president need to say yes to a pardon? He needs the facts and he needs support. And so that was what we worked on. And I hired a fantastic attorney. His name is Dave Harrison from Spiro Harrison, and he was brilliant. He created this pardon packet that was genius. And then we just figured out how to talk to people, and then God's providence led us through networking to me making an appearance on the Ingraham angle. And I happened to be in the green room with Mark Meadows, who was President Trump's chief of staff. And I was a little like disconnected, didn't really realize who exactly he was at the time. But he told me before he went on, he was on directly before me. He said, the president will be watching. And I had an audience of one. So I knew I just had to go out there and have a great conversation and do the best I could. And that was probably a number of months before the pardons eventually came in December of 2020.
Okay, Jordan, play the homecoming video. I think we need something to lighten up a little bit.
Wait, is it? Okay, we all come in. Okay, Joey, it's okay. Y'all just come on in.
Wow.
It looks like she didn't let you go.
I jokingly say she stayed about that way for about 7 to 10 business days. Like every
Yeah.
picture I have of him from the very beginning, she's just clinging to him like a little monkey.
Okay, in the book, I haven't finished it, but I picked up that you still caught some flack from some of the liberal press and said you guys were pardoned when you shouldn't have been because you were bad guys.
Sure.
Which wasn't true. Everything proved it out. So the liberal press completely changed and tried to keep hanging you guys. Is that true?
Yes, sir. We were issued gag orders from the beginning of the trial all the way through, and even during our prison sentences. So there was never a way for us to even walk through our story. And what was interesting, even during the trial, the Associated Press would sit through the first half of the day, which was the prosecution side, and then leave when our defense attorneys would present our side. And so everything that was being printed was simply just to underscore that original narrative.
And the perspective that Gina Keating lends is she is a liberal journalist, and she was very reluctant to get involved in the story. But then when she started looking under the hood, she just couldn't look away. And she really takes a very critical approach to the media and to the lack of curiosity and to the fact that they were just completely willing to maintain, this government status quo because there's this kind of quid pro quo. You give the narrative, we give you inside access. And so it's become very corrupted in that way.
So what you're really saying is not Democrat or Republican, it's just corrupt across the board. And you got caught by a very, very, very corrupt situation that was used to underpin a foreign government that basically wanted to destroy the United States. Wouldn't you say, Cedric?
I would definitely say that. And I want to ask you, Paul, how much credit do you give to Christin for what happened, for things working out?
I give Christin the amount of credit that Barack did to Deborah and judges. I don't want to leave that threshold of my door without knowing that Christin's there.
Yeah, I know that feeling. My wife, I tell people she saved my life.
Amen.
Right? She did some things when I fought my wife. She was I needed counseling. I had some issues, and I was anti-counselor. Now that I counsel, but she fought for me to help me. And as I was listening to your story, I'm thinking, here's somebody, she's out here advocating, little small frame, but in the fight.
And by extension, even today. She is one of very few people that I've ever experienced unconditional love from.
Yes. Yes.
All
Yeah.
glory to God.
When we talk to couples, it's like if you understand the Bible talks about in Ecclesiastes, two are better than one.
Yes, sir.
Right? Because you get a better return. When we are walking in lockstep, I was speaking at Wounded Warriors over the weekend. I told them, I said, listen, I'll put myself and that woman against any of y'all because she has my back and I have hers.
I feel the same way
Yeah.
about my wife, and our story has none of the firestorm between us. We both had firestorm
Yes.
in previous lives. So I got to tell you, this has been fabulous. I want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And share this YouTube video. Share and tell this couple's story. Not about the political betrayal, not about all of that. Share about how two people of faith came to a greater faith
Yes.
and walked through a fire and came out on the other side with 4 people in the fire, not just 3.
That's right.
Cedric, take us out.
All right. Well, again, ask you to pray with us. Father, in your name, we thank you for this day. We thank you for moving on behalf of Paul and on behalf of Christin, on behalf of Lily, on behalf of their family, and on behalf of Truth. Thank you, Father. And we ask that you continue to work with those who have been brought under fire, brought into the fire. We ask that you, as you do, get in the fire with them. Keep this country. Bring us back together. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you for bringing wisdom. Thank you for bringing knowledge. Thank you for bringing discernment. And thank you for being a message about your God, our God, and how important that is. Thank you. And join us next week. This is Jim Blythe and Cedric White. We are Veterans Impact Show.